going to record now the shir for Monday morning. We were up to Lamed Aleph Amud Bet, about 8-9 lines from the bottom. Tanya, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, Im yomru l'chazkenim sator, if elderly people tell you to demolish something, and v'yalodim, younger people tell you b'nei to build something, so you should sator v'al tivne, better to demolish as the older people told you to do, and don't build. Shestir hatzakenim, because when elder people tell you to demolish something, binyan, it's really constructive. And binyan yalodim, when children tell you to build something, it's actually stir, it could be destructive. And v'simil davar, as a sign for this, is Rechavam ben Shlomo, Rechavam the son of Shlomo. When Rechavam the son of Shlomo became king, so some people came to him and asked him that he should please lower taxes, because his father Shlomo had very heavy taxes. Older people told Rechavam that they were right, he should lower the taxes. Younger people told him no, that he should raise the taxes. And Rechavam unfortunately decided to raise the taxes, and that's when people rebelled and broke off from Israel and created a northern kingdom under Yeravam. So even though the elder people told him, Sator, demolish some of the tax structure, but that would have been constructive. When the younger people told him to build a stronger tax structure, that ended up being destructive. Taner Rabbanan, the rabbis taught in the Braita, Mokom shemafsikim b'Shabbat Shachrit. When you finish reading Shabbat morning, you finish the parsha, so Sham Koren b'Mincha. At Mincha you start from there, let's say Nirit l'Sheni, for instance. But Mincha, where you got to at Mincha, Sham Koren b'Yom B'Sheni. On Monday you go, let's say, from Sheni to Shlishi. B'Sheni, where you got to on Monday, Sham Koren b'Chamishi. On Thursday, you'll go from Shlishi to Revi. And B'Chamishi, where you finished on Thursday, Koren l'Shabbat haba. The following Shabbat, you finish from Revi to the end. Divrei Reb Meir. So Reb Meir says you always go forward. Again, Shabbat morning you'll read till the end of a parsha. And Shabbat mincha you'll do a piece, and then on Monday you'll do the following piece. On Thursday you do the following piece, and the following Shabbat you'll finish the parsha. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda disagrees, and he says no. Mokam shemafsikim b'Shabbat Shachrit, Sham Koren b'Mincha. Wherever you got to Shabbat morning, that's what you read at Mincha, Uba Sheni, Uba Chamishi, and V'le Shabbat Haba. And that's the same place where you start again on Monday, the same place you start again on Thursday, and the same place where you start again the following Shabbat. And that's what we do. Amar Rabbi Zeira says the halacha, the law is Mokam Shemafsikim b'Shabbat Shachrit, the exact same place that you finished Shabbat morning, Sham Koren b'Mincha. That's where you read at Mincha. Uba Sheni, that's the exact same place that you read over again on Monday. Uba Chamishi, and again on Thursday. And L'Shabbat Haba, the following Shabbat, again you start over again from wherever you finished the previous Shabbat. The Gemara asks, V'leim halacha ka Rabbi Yehuda, why don't you keep it short? Just say the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, because that's exactly what Rabbi Yehuda said. And the Gemara answers, Mishum da'afchi lahu, because there was a confusion. Some people reversed the opinions. Some people reversed Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda's opinions. So if you'll just say that the halacha is like Reb Yehuda, I'm not going to be sure what it was that Reb Yehuda said. Did Reb Yehuda say that Shabbat Mincha and Monday and Thursday and the following Shabbat, you always start from the same place? Or did he meant that you just read and then you keep going and keep going and keep going? So since it'll get confusing, so Reb Zeira described exactly what the halacha is. You read on Shabbat morning, at Mincha you go from there, and then Monday and Thursday, the following Shabbat, you start from the exact same place that you started at Shabbat Mincha. Taner Rabbanan, the rabbis taught in a Braita, Potech v'roeh, you open up the Sefer Torah, when you get an Ali, you open the Sefer Torah, you see where you're supposed to start reading from, Golel, close the Sefer Torah, and Mevarech, make your bracha. Then v'chozer potech, then open it again, v'koreh, and then you read. Divrei Reb Meir. So according to Reb Meir, you make the bracha with the Sefer Torah closed after you saw the place. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. He says, Potech, you open the Torah v'roeh, and you see the pasuk that you need to read, and then Mevarech, make your bracha, v'koreh, and read, but don't close it. My Talmud Reb Meir, why did Reb Meir say to close the Torah before you make the bracha? Kiddu Ula, because it's something that Ula said. The Amar Ula said, Lipnei ma amru, why was it said Hakore baTorah lo yisayeh lam turgaman? Why does it say that the one who reads the Torah shouldn't help the translator translating? Kedei shelo yomru, people shouldn't say the Targum kosev b'Torah. If the reader will help the translator, people will think that the translation is written in the Torah. Maybe you have an art scroll, Sefer Torah, with a translation in it. So Hachanami here also, the reason why Reb Meir says to close the Sefer Torah is Kedei shelo yomru brachos ksuvim b'Torah. Because if you have the Torah open, somebody might mistakenly think that you have, like, the brachos of the Torah is written in the actual Sefer Torah. V'Rab Yehuda, and why does Rab Yehuda say that you can keep the Sefer Torah open? Because Targum ikalamiti. Translation, you can make a mistake. Maybe somebody will think that you actually wrote in the translation of the Torah in the Torah. But brachot lekalamiti. Brachot, nobody will think that the brachot, everybody knows that the Torah is not a siddur. So the Torah doesn't have any brachot written into it. So Rabbi Yehuda feels comfortable to have you have the Torah open. And as you know, our custom is those who have it open turn away. Sfaradim put a cloth over it, and Chassidim actually close the Sefer. Amar Rabbi Zeir, Amar Rav Masna, said in the name of Rav Masna, Halacha, the halacha is poteach v'roeh. You open the Sefer Torah and see where you're going to read from. Umevarech, and you make the bracha with the Sefer Torah open without closing it. V'korei, and that's how you read. But Lema, why didn't he say halacha Rabbi Yehuda? Why didn't he simply say the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda? Because that's exactly what Rabbi Yehuda said. Mishum da'afchilahu, because some people reversed the opinions of Rabbi Meir Rabbi Yehuda. We weren't sure who said to close the Sefer when you make the bracha, and who said that you keep the Sefer Torah open when you make the bracha. So Reb Zeir says that halacha is keep the Sefer Torah open when you make the bracha. Amar Reb Zeir, Amar Rav Masna, haluchais. Rashi says that the haluchais, we're not sure what it is, but some say that it's the covers of a Sefer, the hard covers of a Sefer. V'habimais, and the beam of the Beis HaKnesses, Ein Ba Mishum Kedusha, does not have Kedusha, and therefore does not need Geniza. Exactly what it is, some people say that it's a platform. Sometimes there was a Sefer Torah on it, sometimes not, but since it wasn't on a regular basis, it didn't really have Kedusha. Amar Rav Shvatya, Amar Rav Yochanan, Amar Rav Shvatya, Rav Yochanan, Golol Sefer Torah, Tzorch Sheyamidenu al Atfar. When you roll the Sefer Torah closed, make sure that when you close it, between one roll and the other roll should be a seam. And the reason for this is that if you pull tight and it tears, at least it'll tear on a seam. But if you pull tight and it's between a seam and a seam, God forbid, you might actually tear in the middle of a section of the Torah. So if when you're pulling tight, make sure you're pulling and the two rolls should have a seam in the middle. Some people say that today we don't have to worry about that because our parchments are much stronger. Amar Rav Shvatya Rav Yochanan, Rav Shvatya said in the name of Rav Yochanan, Hagolol Sefer Torah. Now you have to picture this. Somebody is holding a Sefer Torah on his lap, and he's rolling it from one place to the other all alone. Golulo mibachutz, ven golulo mibifnim. So you should roll. Again, you have the two rolls of the Sefer Torah on your lap. So one of them is closer to your body, one of them is closer to the end of your lap, closer to the knee. Always roll the one that's closer to your knee towards yourself. Because if you roll the one that's on the inside, closer to your body, to the outside, then the outer scroll will roll off your knee. Again, you have two rolls of the Sefer Torah on your lap. You have the outer one closer to the knee, closer to the edge, and the inner one closer to your body. So when you're rolling, make sure that you're always going to roll the outer one towards your body. That way you're safe, it's not going to fall off your lap. But because if you'll roll the inner one towards the outer one, then the outer one may fall off. But kishehu mahadkai mibifnim ve'mahadkai mibachutz. But at the end, when it comes time to close up, carefully close the inner one towards the outer one. Because if you're going to close the outer one towards the inner one, your arms are going to go over the space between the outer one and the inner one, and your arms are covering the writing. So gently, gently, gently roll the inner one towards the outer one, and that way your arms are not going over the writing between the two rolls. Omer of Shvatim Rabbi Yochanan Asara Shekoru B'Torah. If 10 people got aliyot, Hagadol Shebehem Golol Sefer Torah. It's the most important person in the shul should do Galila. Now Galila means actually the lifting of the Sefer Torah, like the Sfardim do. Hagololo notel schar kulam. The one who raises the Sefer Torah and then puts it down and rolls it together takes the reward away from everyone. Because Rabbi Shua Levi, because Rabbi Shua Levi says that Asara Shekara b'Torah, if 10 people read the Torah, Hagolol Sefer Torah Kibol Schar Kulam. The one who raised the Sefer Torah and rolled it together takes the reward of everybody. The Gemara asks, Schar Kulam Sal Kedatach, why should this man who raised the Sefer Torah and rolls it together take away everybody else's reward? Ela'ema Kibol Schar Keneged Kulam. His reward is equal to all the readers. All the readers who read get rewarded for reading the Torah in public. And this one who raised the Torah and rolled it together gets a reward equal to all the readers. And perhaps the reason is because all the readers read and the translators translated, but that was only for people that were listening. But the one who raised the Torah and showed it to everybody showed that this Torah belongs to every single person in the synagogue. And that's very, very important, and it's as important as all the people who read. Amr Reb Shvati, Amr Reb Yochanan. Reb Shvati said in the name of Reb Yochanan, Minayin shemishtamshim bebatkol. If you were a voice from heaven, you should know that if you're about to do something or not to do something, you should take a voice from heaven into account whether you're going to do or not do what you're about to do. Shenemar, because there's a pasuk, the pasuk in Yeshayahu Perik Lamed, Ba'aznecha tishmano davar miacharecha leimor. Your ears will hear a word from behind you saying, "This is the way to go," and you should have faith in that voice. But that voice, to have faith in it, is only with certain restrictions. Hanimili deshama kol gavra b'masa. If you hear the voice of a man in town, and the men usually were not in town, they were out in the fields, so it's unusual to hear a male voice in town. Or if you heard kal itata bedabra, if you heard a woman's voice in a field, and the women usually were in town and out in the fields. So if you heard an unusual voice, like a man during the day in town, or a woman during the day in the fields, and Vahuda Amar, and if the voice said hin hin, if it was a positive thing, it repeated it twice. And Vahuda Amar lav lav, or if it was a negative thing, it repeated it twice. So then you should pay attention to that voice from heaven and act upon it. Amar Rav Shvati, Amar Rav Yochanan. Rav Shvati said in the name of Rav Yochanan, Kol hakori below ne'ima, whoever reads the Torah without the ta'amim, without the tune, Vishona, or he learns Mishnayot below Zimra without a song. And Tosfos says, interestingly, that once upon a time the Mishnayot also had ta'amim. And the reason why they had ta'amim is because people remember things longer with the tune. So people didn't used to have, Mishnayot was Torah Shabbal Peh, it was learned by heart. So they used to have a tune to help them remember it by heart. So whoever learns the Mishnayot without song, Olav HaKasuv Omer, the Pasuk says a negative thing about him. V'gam ani nasati lehem chukim lo tovim. Have I given you statutes that aren't good for you? And the end of the pasuk is mishpatim lo yichyu behem. Have I given judgments that you won't live by? So anybody who reads without the tune or learns Mishnayos without the tune, God says, what have I given you statutes that are not good and judgments not to live by? Matkif la Abayis, Abayis says mishum de yada levasumi kala. And just because somebody doesn't know how to sweeten his voice, somebody doesn't have a good voice, so mishpatim leyichyu behem karis bay. Are you going to apply upon him a verse, mishpatim leyichyu, judgments that you can't live by? Why do you apply such a negative statement to somebody who just doesn't know how to sing? Or rather, the pasuk is referring to Kedar of Misharshia. The negative pasuk is referring to something said by Rav Misharshia. The Amar who says, Shnei Talmid Chachamim, 2 scholars, Hayoshvim who live, Be'irachas in one city, they don't cooperate with each other in halacha. Aleim akasav omer, the pasuk says about them, v'gam ani nasati lahem chukim lo tovim. For these uncooperative Talmidei Chachamim, I've given them statutes that are not good. Umishpatim lo yichyu b'hem. I've given them judgments that they will not live by, because they should cooperate in halacha rather than quibble and argue and be uncooperative. So this negative pasuk is talking about scholars who don't cooperate in halacha. It's not talking about somebody who doesn't know how to sing the tamim of Torah or the tune of Mishnayot. Amar Rabbi Parnach, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Parnach said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Kol ha'oches Sefer Torah arum. Whoever holds a Sefer Torah naked, meaning without a cloth, he holds the parchment. Nikbar arum, will be buried naked without shrouds. Orum sal kedatach. I don't understand. A person who touches the parchment of a Sefer Torah will be buried naked without garments. Ela'ema, rather you should say nikbar orum below mitzvot. He's buried naked without any mitzvot. Below mitzvot sal kedatach. Would it enter your mind that he's buried without any mitzvah? Just because he touched the Sefer Torah with his bare hand, he's lost all the mitzvahs of his whole life? Omar Abayis says, Nikbar Orum Bla Ota mitzvah. He's buried naked without that mitzvah. What does that mean? So Tosfot explains, certainly if he touched the Sefer Torah with his bare hand, he's buried naked without the mitzvah of touching the Sefer Torah using a cloth. But that's obvious. He didn't touch the Sefer Torah with a cloth. So how can he be buried with that mitzvah if he never did it? But what it means is, let's say he was reading the Torah and he was learning the Torah, but then afterwards he didn't have respect and he touched the parchment of the Torah with his bare hand, he loses the reward of the Torah that he just read, of the Torah that he just learned. So Nikbar Oram, he's buried naked below Ota Mitzvah, without the mitzvah of reading or learning the Torah that he had just done. Amar Rabbi Yanai Breder Rabbi Yanai Saba, Rabbi Yanai, the son of the older Rabbi Yanai, who said Mishmeder Rabbi Yanai Rabbah, who said it in the name of the great Rabbi Yanai, Mutav Tigol Lamet Pachat, better to roll a cloth around the Sefer Torah, Val Yigolel Sefer Torah. When you have a Sefer Torah and you're trying to wrap it in a cloth, don't turn the Sefer Torah as you're turning and turning and turning, and that way wrapping it in a cloth. Rather, take the cloth and wrap it around the Sefer Torah, because it's disrespectful to turn and turn and turn the Torah in order to wrap it with a cloth. You should know that the same thing happens sometimes when people take off their tefillin. So they're putting the straps around the tefillin. So what you have to do is take the strap and turn it around the bayit. Don't rotate the bayit so that when you're rotating the bayit, the strap ends up being wrapped around the side of your bayit. Turn the strap. Don't turn the bayit, because it's disrespectful to the bayit the same way it's disrespectful here to the Torah. So what we learned this morning in this Gemara, we learned a number of things. The first thing was that if elder people tell you to destroy something and younger people tell you to build something, it's better to listen to the older people, because what they say is destructive really will be destructive. What they say is to be destructive really will be constructive. And when younger people tell you to construct something, sometimes their construction really is destructive. And the example was when Rechavam, the son of Shlomo, took over, he was advised by younger people to build more taxes into the system, and the older people told him to demolish some of the taxes and take it easy. Unfortunately, Rechavam listened to the younger people, and he raised taxes, and he had a civil war, and the Jewish nation split into a northern and southern kingdom. We learned a dispute between Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda. Reb Meir said that you finish reading Shabbat morning, and then for Mincha you continue from there, and on Monday you continue from where you got to Shabbat Mincha, and on Thursday you continue from where you got to on Monday, and the following Shabbat you continue from where you got to on Thursday. And Reb Yehuda says that no, wherever you got to Shabbat morning, that's what you read for Shabbat Mincha, and the same thing you read for Monday, and the same thing you read for Thursday, and the same place you start the following Shabbat. The Gemara ruled like Reb Yehuda, but instead of simply saying the halacha is like Reb Yehuda, Reb Zeir actually repeated what Reb Yehuda had said, because there was a lack of clarity as to which opinion was Reb Meir's and which opinion was Reb Yehuda's. So therefore he spelled it out, that wherever you finished reading on Shabbat morning, from there you reach Shabbat Mincha, and exactly the same place you start on Monday, and that's the exact same place you start on Thursday, and that's the exact same place you start the following Shabbat. Then we had another dispute between Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda. When you get called up for an aliyah, Reb Meir said you close the sefer before you make the bracha, and Reb Yehuda said you make the bracha with the sefer open. Why did Reb Meir say to close the sefer Torah before you made the bracha? Because Ula once said that the reader should not help the translator translate. And why? It shouldn't seem as if the translation is also written in the Torah that the reader is reading from. So here too, it shouldn't seem like the bracha is in the Torah. That's why Reb Meir said to close it. And Rabbi Yehuda said I wasn't concerned, because translation, somebody might still think that the translation is written between the lines in the Torah, but nobody will think that the bracha was written in the Torah. Reb Zeir ruled like Rabbi Yehuda, but he actually spelled out that you leave the Sefer Torah open when you make the bracha. Why didn't he keep it short to say the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda? Because people made a mistake between Reb Meir and Rabbi Yehuda as to who said what. So if you will just say the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, people will know, might not be clear what Rabbi Yehuda said. Reb Zeir said that the luchot, the covers of a sefer, and certain platforms did not have kedusha because they were only used from time to time, and therefore they don't need geniza. Rav Shvatia said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, when you do Galila, you roll up a Sefer Torah, make sure that the seam is between one roll and the other, so that if you pull too tight, if you rip it, at least you're ripping it on a seam, and you're not ripping it in the middle of the words. But as I said today, some people are not careful about that because our parchments are much stronger. Rav Shvatia also said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, if you're all alone and you're rolling the Sefer Torah from one place to the other, make sure you roll from the outside in so that the Sefer Torah can't roll off, because if you roll from the inside out, the other side of the Sefer Torah may roll off. When it comes time to finish rolling it, carefully roll from the in to the out, because if you roll from the out to the in, then your arms that are reaching to the out will be covering the writing. Another thing Rav Shvatia said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, if 10 people got a liot, the most chashuv people, the most honorable person, should be the one who lifts up the Sefer Torah and closes it. And he gets the reward of all the previous people. He doesn't take away the reward from the previous people, but he gets rewarded equivalent to the previous people because he showed the Torah was the heritage of all the people. He lifted it. Rav Shvatia also said that if you hear a voice from heaven, you should take it seriously. And he brought a pasuk from Yeshayahu Perek Lamed, Ba'oznecho tishmana dover mi'acharecho lemor. When your ears hear a voice behind you saying, you should pay attention to it, but only if the voice is an unusual voice, like a female voice in the fields during the day, or a male voice in town during the day, because the men used to be out in the fields and the women used to be in town. And it's only if the voice repeats its message twice. If it's a positive message, it's repeated twice positively. If it's a negative message, it's repeated twice negatively. Rav Shvatia said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, if you read the Torah without the ta'amim, or you learn Mishnayos without a song, so there's a pasuk written about you, I have given you statutes that aren't good and judgments that you will not live by, which is a very harsh pasuk. So Abaye says, just because somebody doesn't have a sweet voice to sing the ta'amim of the Torah or sing the tune of the Mishnah, he's considered that God gave him judgments that he can't live by? Well, why is it so bad? But rather, if Misharshi says, if two scholars live in a town and they don't cooperate together in halacha, God has said about them, I've given you statutes that are not good for you. I've given you judgments that you will not live by. Because since you don't cooperate, you'll come up with the wrong halacha and you'll mislead people. Rabbi Parnach said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, if you hold the Sefer Torah without a cloth, he'll be buried naked. Does it literally mean buried naked without shrouds? It means he's buried without any mitzvahs. How can he be buried without any mitzvahs? He did mitzvahs his whole life, but rather he's buried naked without that mitzvah. And what does that mitzvah mean? If he just learned in the Torah or read the Torah and he was disrespectful that he touched the Torah with his bare hand, he doesn't get credit for the Torah that he just learned or read. Rabbi Yanai, the son of the elder Rabbi Yanai, in the name of the greater Rabbi Yanai, said that when you're rolling a Sefer Torah, when you're covering a Sefer Torah with a cloth, roll the cloth, wrap the cloth around the Torah. Don't roll the Torah inside the cloth. So we're going to leave the end here for Wednesday morning, and over the next 2 days, that's Tuesday, we're going to do some catch-up from some Gemara that we missed from the first parak. And now we'll do some Haggada Shel Pesach. We were up to after the Dayenus, and Rav Gamliel says, whoever didn't say these three things on Pesach did not satisfy his obligation. Pesach, Matzah, and Morer. So you have to explain why we eat Pesach, or why our ancestors ate Pesach when they had a Korban Pesach, because Hashem skipped over the houses of our ancestors in Egypt, and it says, Zevach Pesach Ul Hashem, this is a Korban Pesach for God, Asher Pesach, who skipped over the houses of the Jews in Egypt, when he struck the Egyptians, and he saved our houses, and the people, when they heard that this is what's going to happen, they bowed. What's interesting, though, is that they ate the Korban Pesach the night before they went out. But it was in anticipation and in expectation that God would skip over their houses, that they already ate a Korban Pesach, which Pesach means to skip over the houses, even before it happened. The matzah that we eat, why? Because the dough of our ancestors did not have a chance to become chametz, before Hashem appeared and said it's time for them to go. As the pasuk says, they baked the dough that they took out of Egypt into cakes of matzot, not chametz, because they were chased from Egypt and they couldn't delay and they made no food. There are two explanations as to the meaning of this. According to one explanation, when they were in Egypt, their holiday of Pesach was only a one-day holiday, and it was only usher for them to eat chametz, but they would have been allowed to own chametz. So consequently, had they had time, they would have baked it into chametz, but not to eat on that day, but they would have eaten it the following day. But they had to bake it into matzah because they had no time to let the matzah leaven. So vayofu et habotzek asher otziu mimitzrayim ugot matzot. They baked it into matzot kilo chametz. They didn't have time to make it chametz because they were chased. But had they had enough time, they would have made it into chametz, because in Egypt there was no prohibition of owning chametz, only not eating chametz, and that prohibition was only one day, so they could have always eaten it the following day. But there's another pshat in the Rishonim that even in Mitzrayim it was prohibited for 7 days to own any chametz. So then, what do you mean that they didn't have time to make chametz? They would have never made it into chametz. It was prohibited to have chametz. The answer is you're right. They baked the dough that they took out of Egypt into matzot because you're not allowed to make chametz. But even the matzah that they made, they couldn't even make it in Mitzrayim. But they carried it with them, they carried the dough with them, didn't allow it to leaven, and only baked it later. Why didn't they bake it into matzot when they were still in Mitzrayim? Because they were hurried and they were rushed, and they weren't given the time even to bake it into matzot. But they never ever would have made it into chametz, even if they had the time, because chametz was prohibited. Also, what's interesting is they already ate matzah at the night of the Seder before they went out of Mitzrayim. So how can you say we eat the matzah because of the matzah that we took out of Egypt, when at the Seder in Egypt, together with the Korban Pesach, they already ate matzah? So one explanation is, like I just told you about the Pesach, in anticipation of going out of Egypt, and they were told they'll go out with matzah, so they already ate matzah at the Seder. Or, as we spoke at another time, that matzah has another identity. Matzah has an identity of slavery as well. Because when they were slaves, the Egyptians would only let them eat matzah, because it's very fast. You take flour and water, put it together, and you bake it 1, 2, 3, and there's no time to leaven it. So even as slaves, we ate matzah, and when we were free, we also took out matzah. So therefore, in the night of the Seder, they still ate matzah, which was this matzah of slavery, and only when they went out do we have the matzah of freedom. And as we discussed earlier when we learned the Haggada, that's why you split the matzah in two. The first half of the matzah, the smaller piece, is what we say the Haggada on. That's the matzah of slavery. And at the end, for Afikomen, we take out the bigger piece of matzah, which is the matzah that represents our freedom. Morer we eat because the Egyptians embittered the lives of our ancestors in Egypt. As it says, they embittered their lives with hard work, with bricks and mortar, and all field work. Everything they did, they worked them beforech, with backbreaking work. The different pshat in what the backbreaking work was. One pshat in the Gemara is they gave the men women's work to do, they gave the women men's work to do. Another pshat is that when they were building the cities of Pitam and Ramses, they crumbled, and that's backbreaking work because you don't see any productivity in what you're doing. The next piece is B'chol Dor V'Dor. In every generation, a person is obligated to see himself as if he went out of Egypt. Because the pasuk says, "V'gadu to levincha," you should tell your son on that day, "Ba'avrzeh Hashem li b'tzeisim b'Mitzrayim." It is for this reason that God did it for me when I went out of Egypt. It's not just our ancestors that God took out of Egypt, but us too. The pasuk says, "V'otanu hotzi misham." God took us out from there. So a person has to, the best of his ability, imagine the scene as if he had gone out of Mitzrayim, to make it very realistic. And therefore the Haggada continues, "Lefichach anachnu chayavim lahodot." Therefore, we need to thank God for this exodus, because if it just would have been to commemorate what happened to our ancestors, so the halacha is that if a miracle happens to a person, he makes a bracha, God did a miracle for me in this place. Even his children and his grandchildren would make a bracha, God did a miracle for my father or grandfather in this place. But after 2 generations, you don't make that bracha. Here we're going to make a bracha at the end of the Haggada of Gal Yisrael. But the story happened to way before me, way before my grandfather. But if a person imagines himself as if he himself went out of Mitzrayim, that he lived through the experience, therefore he can make this bracha because he's imagining that the Exodus happened to himself. So therefore we need to, and there's many expressions of praise here. If if you actually want to count them, watch. Lahodot, lahalel, leshabeach, lefor, leromim, lahader, levorech, laale, ulekales. And some have a girsa lenatseach. So that would make 10. And then it says, God took us me'avdut lecherut, from slavery to freedom, me'yogon lesimcha, from sorrow to happiness, me'eva, from mourning to yontif to holiday, me'afela, from darkness, Lord Godel, to light, u'mishibud legula, from enslavement to redemption. So that's 5. So the 10 expressions plus 5 is 15. And therefore we say, Shira Chadasha, Hallelu Ka. Hallelu Ka is Yud Hey. We praise Hashem in 15 different forms of praise. And as I told you many times, there's 15 Dayenus. The Kaddish or Chatz, you can count them, is also 15. There's 15 forms of praise that we give to God. The expression used here in the Haggada is Shira Chadasha, and Shira Chadasha is feminine. Shira Chadasha. In the bracha at the end of the Haggada, which is coming up soon, we say V'nomar lefana v'noda lecha. We will say to you in the future when the Gula comes, Shir Chadash masculine. What's the difference between Shira Chadasha feminine and Shir Chadash masculine? Tosfot brings in the name of a Mechilta, in Masechtas Pesachim, that the female Shira Chadasha is like a woman who gives birth, but even after she gives birth, there is still after pain from having given birth. And all the Geulot that we had, whether it was the Geula from Mitzrayim, or the Geula from Bavel, or the Geula even when the Chashmonaim defeated the Yevonim, it was a Geula, but it wasn't a perfect Geula. There was still more pain to come. And therefore that Geula is written in the feminine Shira Chadasha. But the Geula that will come one day, when Mashiach comes, there'll be no pain after that. And there'll be Shir Chadash masculine, like the masculine Geula is one that has no after pain to it. The only question is, if that's true, then how can we at the Seder say, V'nomar lefana, we will say Shira Chadasha. What we will say will be a Shir Chadash. Shira Chadasha is what we said. We said when we left Egypt, we said a Shira Chadasha, we said a Hallel. That's V'ne'emar, not V'nomar. So many poskim actually say, it's the Shalah, the Magen Avram, the Mishnah Berurah, that the text should be V'ne'emar lefanav. And we said, when we went out of Egypt, Shira Chadasha, a feminine type of Shira. But many have left the gears of the way we have it, V'nomar, because if you are now imagining as if you are going out of Egypt, so you say V'nomar, let us now, V'nomar, let us now say Shira Chadasha. The Shira Chadasha that the Jews say when we leave Egypt. We split Hallel into 2 parts. The first 2 chapters of Hallel are done before the meal, and the rest is done after the meal. Usually Hallel is done standing, and here we sit. Hallel is Hallel Avdei Hashem Ha'omdim Bebeis Hashem. We should stand. This Hallel is not really a Hallel, it's more of a Shira. Hallel has to do with Yontif, and this is a song praise because we have just experienced Yetzias Mitzrayim, and therefore it can be done sitting, it can be split. The first 2 is called Hallel HaMitzri, Halu Avdei Hashem, we are slaves of Hashem, we're no longer slaves of Paro. B'tzeis Yisrael Mitzrayim, we went out of Mitzrayim. The other paragraphs of Hallel are said after the meal because those paragraphs of Hallel relate to the Geula that will come. In the bracha, or just a few small points, that's why Halu Avdei Hashem, we are Avdei Hashem, we are free. We are free to be slaves of God. Hashem is Hamagbil L'Shavas, He's very high, and Hamashpili Lirot B'Shamayim of Oretz, He lowers Himself down to heaven and earth. It's only someone who's very great who can afford to lower himself to everyone and anyone, and he's not afraid of harming his reputation or losing his status. People who are not confident of their status would not want to lower themselves to deal with or have anything to do with lower people. But God is so great that no matter who He lowers Himself to or who He deals with, it never affects His status. He's so Magbila Shavas, He's so high that He can afford Hamashpili Liro to go down and see B'Shamayim of Oretz. B'tzeis Yisrael Mitzrayim, when the Jews went out of Egypt, Beit Yaakov me'am loez, the Jewish people went out from a foreign nation. The Medrash says the Jews never changed their language, so they left me'am loez. Loez means a foreign language. We left the nation of a foreign language. Haita Yehuda lekatsha, Yehuda was his designated holy one, because Nachshon ben Aminadab from Yehuda was the first one to leap into the sea before it split. There actually were 4 parts to the Gula. You know this by heart already. Votseiti is when we stopped actually working. V'itzalti, when we didn't feel enslaved to them anymore either. V'ga'alti, we were redeemed when we walked out of Egypt. V'lakachti, when Hashem said, I took you as a nation, that was in Har Sinai. So Har Sinai was stage number 4 of our Gula. And that's why B'tzeis Yisrael Mitzrayim has Heharim Rogdu Cha'elim Givois Kivnei Tzon. The mountains danced like rams and the hills like young sheep. Because when did they dance? When the mountains were jumping and dancing, each one wanting that the Torah should be given on them. But in the end, as you know, Hashem gave it on Har Sinai because it was a more humble mountain. In the bracha, we say Asher Galanu v'Golas Aveiseinu. The reason we say Galanu first, because since we imagined ourselves as if we were the ones who went out of Egypt, so we say Asher Galanu. This is more than we said in the beginning of the Haggada, that if Hashem had not freed our ancestors, we might have still been enslaved. So therefore, in the beginning of the Haggada, we only said, well, I'm grateful that Hashem took out my great-grandfather because now I can be free. But I wasn't actually freed. I'm free now because Hashem freed my ancestor. But now that we've lived through, we've experienced the actual exodus, we say, Asher Ge'olanu, Hashem redeemed us. And V'golas Avisein, He also redeemed our ancestors. And we arrived this night to eat matzah and moror. We hope that Hashem will let us reach other holidays, will come towards us in peace. We will be happy that the Beis HaMikdash is rebuilt, and we will eat min hazvachim and min apsochim. Zvachim and psochim means that there used to be a korban chagiga that was sacrificed on the 14th of Nisan, the same day that you sacrificed the korban Pesach, and you ate from the chagiga during the Seder dinner, which made you relatively full, but not full, and then you ate the korban Pesach when you were actually full, so that you shouldn't be eating the korban Pesach in order to satisfy yourself because you're starving, but you should eat it for a mitzvah. So that's why we say we will eat min hazvachim, we'll eat a chagiga, and min apsochim as well as psochim. And your Haggada, you may see that on Matzoi Shabbat, if the Seder would be Matzoi Shabbat, you say psochim and zvachim. Because if the Seder was Matzoi Shabbat, then on Shabbat you used to slaughter the Pesach, but not the Chagiga. So then the Pesach would come first, and the Chagiga would be the Chagiga of Yom Tov of the following day. And we finish Baruch At Hashem Goal Yisrael. Ashkenazim make another Baruch Pri Hagofen, because we feel, the Ashkenazim feel that every cup is another mitzvah, so therefore we make another bracha. Sfardim feel that we made a Baruch Pri Hagofen in the beginning of the Seder, and we didn't stop concentrating on the cup of wine. It was here, so you don't have to make another Baruch Pri Hagofen. We now wash our hands with the bracha, because we're going to eat bread, unleavened bread. It's bread, because we make hamotzi lechem and oretz. And we say motzi matzah. Motzi matzah means we make a bracha. We hold the top matzah and the bottom matzah and the middle matzah, because the top and the bottom one are whole, so that's lechem mishnah. The broken one in the middle is the lechem oni, the poor man's bread. Like a poor man never eats a whole matzah. He breaks off a piece to eat. He leaves the rest for later because he's afraid he's not going to have. So you hold anyway all 3 of them now, and you make a motzi, because you make a motzi in lechem mishnah. Then you let the bottom one go, and holding just the top one and the broken middle one, you make Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Asher Kiddushanu B'mitzvos V'tzivaanu Al Achilat Matzah. And you should eat a kazayit. I mean, if you eat one kazayit, you're yotzei, but you should eat a kazayis from the top and a kazayis from the middle one. There isn't enough a kazayis from the top and a kazayis from the middle one for everybody. So everybody at the Seder gets a piece from the top and a piece from the bottom, and you fill in with your own matzah in order to have a kazayit. You eat a kazayis from the middle one because that's the lechem oni, that's the bread of poverty, that's the one we said the Haggada over and about. The Mishnah Berurah says we should eat a kazayis from the top one also, because since you used it for lechem mishnah, it's honorable to eat a kazayis from that as well. Then you take more, a kazayis of more, you dip it into charoset, and you make a bracha, asher kedushanim tzvos. By the way, the matzah that you eat, you must recline. There's a dispute according to one opinion, according to the Rosh, Rabbeinu Asher, this is the matzah that you yotze mitzvah's matzah with. According to the Rashbam and Rashi, the mitzvah's matzah that you'll be yotze will be with the matzah of Afikomen, and we'll get to that. For mor, you make a brocha al achilas mor. You don't make a bora pri adama, not because it's part of the meal, because this mor is really not really part of the meal, but you made a bora pri adama on karpas, and you had in mind the beginning of the seder, the karpas, that the bora pri adama should go on the mor as well. Then you take from the bottom matzah, you take a kazayis of matzah, you could take a kazayis of mor, make a sandwich, because Hillel used to take a kazayis of Pesach, a kazayis of matzah, and a kazayis of mor, and make a sandwich and eat it together, as it says, al matzot umrorim yochluhu, together, ensemble, with matzah and mor, you should eat the Pesach. We don't have a Pesach, at least we make a sandwich with the matzah and mor, the way Hillel used to eat it. So on one hand, we do like the Chachamim, that we eat matzah and mor separately, and we also do like Hillel, to eat matzah and mor together. Therefore, it would be a good idea not to talk until the end of Korach, because the bracha of matzah and mor that you made in beginning should be going on Hillel style as well, and you eat it reclining. I'm going to pause here, even though it's a bit short, and I hope this will upload.